Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania.
Where we discuss history and hauntings.
Today, we're going to be traveling to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to discuss our first ship on the podcast. I'm Erica.
And I'm Sarah.
Let's get into it. I'm super excited to talk about this. I, as a kid, was obsessed with the Titanic, so
Oh my God.
I was kind of interested.
So was my brother.
Really?
He made me watch that movie to no end, and I'm still not over it. I wasted so many hours of my childhood.
It's a long movie.
And it's annoying.
Yeah. No, I can imagine watching it over and over again. But no, I had all the books. I had a pop-up book of Titanic, like historical kids book.
I got it. I was like, how many different times can you learn the same story?
But no, it was interesting. So I'm excited about this. So the ship that we're discussing right now is docked in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the Independence Seaport Museum. And it's the USS Olympia C6. And it's actually the oldest remaining ship afloat currently, which is...
Like in the world or in the US?
I think in the world. It said just the oldest remaining steel ship afloat.
That's cool.
So I think in the world. Originally, it was commissioned at Union Iron Works in San Francisco, California, and this was on February 5th, 1895.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So the first major thing, this ship has been through so much in history. It wasn't officially decommissioned until 1922. So it's been through a lot. Yes. So the first major event that it was a part of was the Spanish-American War, and it was a part of the Asiatic Fleet, which was just a United States fleet in the Navy. And she specifically took part in the Battle of Manila Bay on May 1st, 1898, which was the first major engagement of the war.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And she actually rose to fame because the Commodore on the ship, George Dewey, this was his flagship, and apparently there's a famous phrase that he uttered, which was, "You may fire when you are ready, Gridley." And Gridley was the captain of the ship. So it was like, again, dun dun dun,
yeah.
like the first major thing. So after that war, she became a training ship at the U.S. Naval Academy. Then was a reserve ship, which means that the ship was ready for service but not currently needed. And finally was a barrack ship. Which
so people just lived there?
Yes, just like barrack ship for the soldiers or the military personnel. But then, in World War I, the ship patrolled the United States eastern coast for U-boats. And in April 1918, she assisted in the Russian Civil War. So a lot of history there. And then her final mission, which this was, I think, one of the coolest things, in October 1921, she brought back the remains of the World War I unknown soldier for internment in Arlington National Cemetery.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
And it was a big thing. So to sidestep quickly, because this was really interesting to me, there were 4 identified soldiers that they found in France. And Sergeant Edward F. Younger was tasked with choosing one to represent all of the unknown soldiers. And then the ship was used to bring it from France back to the U.S.
That's so cool. Honestly, so my grandfather was in the Navy, and I didn't even know that this was in Philly, so I wonder if he's been. I'm sure he'd be super interested.
It's really cool. And from what it looks like, they have really in-depth and very interesting tours.
Cool. We'll have to check it out.
Yeah. And then, like I said, so it was decommissioned in December 1922 at Philadelphia. And like we've said before, with all of the above history, clearly there's going to be some supernatural activity going on. So I'll talk about the general hauntings and kind of things that have been reported just at random. And then I did watch a CBS Philadelphia news report that they did on YouTube, which I thought was interesting. And Ghost Hunters also did an episode.
We love them.
Yes. So super interesting. So to start, in general, there were 19 reported documented deaths on board, which for all of the time that it's been in commission and all of the events that it went through, I did think 19 was pretty low.
Yeah.
However, one of the deaths was pretty crazy. So a man named Gunnar John Johnson was reportedly doing the ship's first firing exercise. So this is like right at the start. You know, it hasn't even been on the ocean yet. And apparently, when you're doing those firing exercises, if the guns are not put on the platforms correctly, they can really do damage.
Oh.
I didn't know this, but it has to be very precise. And when he fired it was a 5-inch gun. It came off of the platform and plunged him into the back wall.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that makes sense, though.
Right. So it was April 20th, 1895. So again, hadn't even been on the ocean yet. And people have said that because that event happened, there's just been a dark cloud over the whole ship.
Well, I'm sure.
Since then.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the engine room, visitors and museum volunteers alike, both of them, have reported seeing a shadowy figure in the room. Others have reported seeing a full body apparition drifting through the corridors of this room. And some people, scarily enough, have said that the apparition or the entity in that room will reach out and grab them as they're walking around.
That's a no from me. That's like the Devil's Den, grabbing people when they hike. Like, that's like immediately getting me out of whatever space I'm in, especially an enclosed ship. No way.
Yes. Yeah. I'd be ready to run.
Yeah.
I would just, no thanks. And so it said that the engine room and the boiler rooms, which we'll talk about a little bit later, are the most haunted. Lurking apparitions and strange shadows have been seen throughout the entire vessel. So as people have walked through, like the soldiers' quarters, for instance, they'll see shadow figures that show up in doorways or mirrors, and then they'll quickly disappear. So you'll see it like out of your periphery or like looking, and then once you turn back, it's gone.
See, I hate the mirror trope, though.
Yeah, me too.
It always freaks me out. I'm like, not the mirror.
Right? Like, I'm supposed to see me.
Me.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And then disembodied voices are also commonly reported, with visitors claiming that spirits have repeatedly spoke directly into their ears.
Saying what?
Yeah.
But saying what?
Oh, I thought you said, say what?
I mean, yes, two things are true.
I don't know. I couldn't find any specific reports about this, but I assume that it's things like, oh, I do have a couple of examples, but like somebody did hear somebody say get out, which was one of them. And it could just, I don't know, like random things.
Yeah, or maybe you know when you can just like tell something's a voice, but you can't really like discern what they're saying. Muffled. It could be that, yeah.
Yes. So some people, like I said, have reported hearing things, like actual sentences. So like a longtime ship volunteer named Harry said that he felt two hands grab his arms and they were icy cold. And he turned around and found no one else in the boiler room. But after he was grabbed, he heard a female disembodied voice say, "I think he's okay," followed by a laugh.
Nope. Because what is that?
I don't know.
Were there even women on the ship?
I don't know.
No way. In the 20s?
No. Actually, interestingly enough, I looked up beforehand, why do we call ships she? Because I was just curious. And it turns out, no, women were not allowed on board. And so it was thought to have a female presence of like...
Whoa.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah. I saw multiple things. Like some people said because females weren't present, the ship kind of served as that female embody. Other people said that people used she to represent like asking for protection from the goddesses, which I thought was interesting.
I feel like it would just be easier to refer to the ship, like you're not going to mix it up with any of the soldiers because they're all he.
That's also a very logical way to look at that. That makes sense.
I'll ask my grandfather.
Yes. Yes. So another member of a paranormal team was doing an EVP session in the boiler room. So she said that she felt a presence, and when she went back and later listened to the EVP, she captured a male saying, "I think I'm in love."
Oh, that's sweet.
I know. So another story, Kevin, a 14-year-old son of a volunteer, was working with another volunteer in the engine room when he said that they saw a dark form dart across a doorway. The same day, they saw the reflection that they had seen dart of the figure in a pane of plexiglass.
So it's like following them.
Yes. And then, they turned around and saw nothing.
Yeah.
So it was like gone in a second, which just terrifying. Another visitor said that she saw an apparition of a man appear. It came out of a corridor, turned right, walked to the rear of the ship, and dissipated into the darkness. And she could see what he was wearing, which was boots, slacks, a button-down shirt, and a short-brimmed hat.
So what era is that?
So the short-brimmed hat, from what I recollect, I think it's like World War I, like Navy hats, is what I'm thinking.
That makes sense.
I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if that goes back further than I thought, and it could have been the Spanish-American War, but I know in World War I they had those.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And many visitors have told staff about a man who is translucent and appears in front of them. And they've also reported a man in a white naval uniform walking about as if on his rounds.
That makes the most sense.
Yes. And then lastly, supposedly, the captain's cabin is also haunted, but I couldn't find any sources for this. Ghost hunters didn't mention it, and the CBS Philadelphia news report that I'll talk about mentioned it, but said, if you want to know the details, come on the tour. So I don't exactly know, but apparently his death is, related to why he's still around.
Oh.
Which is interesting. So if you're ever in Philly and you want to find out for us and let us know what the story is, please do. So that's all of the information that I could find from the general public. So the CBS Philadelphia news report, some more history that I found out. There were 2 recorded deaths by suicide, and the tour guide says that one of them still seems to be hanging around. It looked like they were just in the entrance of the ship, so that seems to be where the suicides occurred.
What a weird choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And she also showed us where Gunnar Johnson had been killed, which I'll get into more specifics of that when we talk about the ghost hunters. But she sort of hinted that this room's floor color was due to the nature of death being associated with the ship, and the floor color was red.
That is creepy.
Yeah.
I always think it's weird when there's like these weird coloring, or like the Jim Thorpe handprint that like persist.
Yeah, and like not brick red, not maroon, like bright
Blood red.
Yes. Yeah. So that was really the only thing from the CBS news story. Again, I think, they were really advertising the tour, so it makes sense. But I thought the floor comment was interesting, so I was like, I'll go into this. And finally, ghost hunters, which I'm so excited to talk about. They sort of went around like they do with the historic expert of the place, and that person explained sort of the same things that we heard about before. So shadow figures reported apparitions appearing. Below decks, it was portside number 2 gun. That is where John Johnson was killed. And like I said, it jumped off the mount due to being faulty. Since this happened, like I said, the manager is the one that stated that people believe there was a storm cloud over the ship. In the engine room, or in that portside gun area, people have also heard knocking in the closets that are there in that room. It sounds like people are trying to get out of the doors.
Oh.
So there are like closets along the wall.
That's creepy.
Yes. And a woman said that she had heard knocking coming from behind one of the doors, so she thought someone was in there, and she went to go check it out, and, nobody answered.
Nope.
Terrifying. In the engine room, the expert said that they saw dark shadows and apparitions, especially one crossing one side of the room to the other, which I think is referring back to the Kevin, the 14-year-old son who saw the thing. And there's a lot of shadows, he said, in the starboard shaft alley, which is a smaller room at the end of the engine room. And then boiler room 5 is the most haunted boiler room. And you hear footsteps overhead. That's what the historic expert said that was happening the most. And one of the ghost hunters investigators actually asked, does it sound like it's coming from like in the room but above, or does it sound like it's coming from up
the top floor?
2 floors? Yeah. And he was like, no, it sounds like it's coming from up 2 floors.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like it sounds distant.
Yeah.
And then shadows and figures have been seen in a passageway that leads into the boiler room and the coal bunkers that lead. And a man who works on the ship, they switched to him. And he said that he's seen figures come out of the small passageway and just walk into the boiler room like people.
Oh.
Yeah.
That always weirds me. Like, it's almost scarier when these apparitions just function, like, on tape, as we've said.
Yes. Yes. It's interesting and scary. It's like they don't know they're not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about the investigation that they did in this episode is this is the first one where they just did shoulder cameras and all of the crew was outside of the ship.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Because it was such tight spaces.
That makes sense.
So they just did the shoulder camera, so it was just 2 of them at one point and then 4 at another point.
Right.
So while the ghost hunters are now inside, this is the full investigation of what they saw themselves. In the officers' quarters, on the 3rd door from the end, people have seen figures, so they kind of like looked around there. And as they're looking in these doors, they hear footsteps right on top of them.
Oh my gosh.
Which
and no one's there?
No, it's just the 2 of them. So the crew is not with them. And so they're like, okay, I guess we should go up and see like what is up there.
Yeah.
And right above them, where they heard the footsteps, is the portside number 2 gun.
Oh my gosh. So it was him.
Yes, that's what they think. And when they listen to the audio later, they can hear footsteps plus a door slamming. And it's loud.
Wow. So something's there.
Yes. Then they go to boiler room number 5 and they enter the passageway. And I don't know how they do this because he was just chilling in there. Like he was like, hello. And I was like, you're like in this tiny little hallway. I don't know how you're comfortable here. So they hear this huge noise, like a rock dropping or coal being shoveled.
Okay.
They head towards the coal bunkers, but nothing happened from there. But it was like it was a pretty big bang.
Sound.
Yeah. 2 other investigators then go up to the portside number 2 gun area. Amy's one of the investigators. Yeah. She said that she feels like somebody's in the room with her, like somebody's watching her and is about to pop out. And all of a sudden they hear a noise towards the closets, which they believe to be knocks. So
these closets.
They're terrifying. And they go over, and the one that they heard the knock from, the lock is moving on the door.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how they don't like freak out.
No. They're like,
freak out.
Hello, is anyone there? And I'm like, I'd be running.
Yeah, no.
Then the 2 new investigators, so Amy and I believe Adam, they head to the engine room, and they do hear a male voice say something like wheat or Pete, but nobody really investigated further. It was just kind of like something they heard. And then they head back to boiler room 5. They heard knocking again, but they actually determined that this was a flag hitting the side of the ship.
Okay.
But that was the only sound that they debunked.
Oh my gosh. So everything else
is just unexplained.
Just freaky.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like there's very subtle things in this ship, but it's very, like, transparent at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so I just read, I think it's called, like, The Big Book of Ghosts or something, and I just read it, and it was saying that, like, most of the things that we think are scary that ghosts do, like disappearing when we turn around or, like, evaporating into mist, it was saying that, like, it's written by like a medium or someone, I guess. They were saying that the ghosts don't want to scare you often, so they do that because they think it's the less scary option than staying there, which is a really interesting take in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see how they think that because, like, okay, let's say for argument's sake that they did stick around, what would happen?
Right,
like, would we be able to talk to them? Yeah. So I guess it is the lesser of 2 scary things, but I don't know which I'd prefer.
Yeah.
Because at least if I was sitting in front of somebody and they weren't doing anything, after a minute, I'd be like, all right, I guess you're okay.
Yeah, like, okay. Yeah.
But to answer our question, would you visit this place of paranormal phenomena?
I would. I really want to take my grandfather there if he hasn't been. So, like, for history's sake, I think it's cool. But 2, it doesn't seem like anything's outright malicious, which is what I always look for on if I would go. And it seems like there are some cool, unique experiences. Like, I know that we see shadow figures in other places, but it seems like they're really distinct here. So I would love to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be really cool. I don't know about being there at night. I think
Yeah.
that would be too scary because it's a ship. So just
Yeah.
in general, that would be scary.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel. Like, I don't love the idea of the ship in general. Like,
No.
but I guess is it in the water? Yeah, you said
Yes.
seaport. Okay, yeah. Yeah, no. That's a no for me.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it better.
No, I agree. So yeah. That is the story of the USS Olympia C6. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, and tune in next week to see where we go next.